Good. Thank you very much. Good morning. It's a honor to be here. Actually, it's my first IAPC conference because I'm relatively new in the procellariform, well, not procellariforms, but albatross and petrels world. Actually, I started 4 years ago with my first experience with Chatham albatrosses in 2020. I'll talk a little bit more about this topic. And today I'm going to present some experiences, some ideas, some preliminary results, some diagnosis of what is going on with the petrels and albatrosses that visit the Humboldt Current and how they are potentially threatened by the longline fisheries, particularly the artisanal longline fisheries. We don't have like a commercial longline fisheries in Peru, but there is a big fleet of artisanal wooden boats that fish for some species, commercial species, I mean. And I'm going to start first acknowledge many people. And first to Mike and Dave Bell, who received me on the 44 islands this year in New Zealand. And we were working together in the field. They work in collaboration with the Department of Conservation in New Zealand. And they have been working there for several years. They have established long-term project since 2021, if I remember well. Despite data on the islands have been collected since the 70s, but they started a banding program and tagging programs too on the island. Also, where is the pointer here? Johannes Fischer from the Department of Conservation, who is here present in this conference, and also to Green Taylor and Igor Debsky, all of them from the Department of Conservation, New Zealand. Because at the very beginning, we interchange ideas about this topic, the interactions between the New Zealand albatrosses and the artisanal fisheries in Peru. And we decided to start collaborative work tagging and monitoring albatrosses on New Zealand islands. Also, I would like to thank, where's that? Okay, here. Javier Quiñones, he works for the Peruvian Marine Research Institute, Instituto del Mar del Perú, who is present here too in the conference, because we have this idea from the very beginning of the project. And so we were collaborating in the last few years, publishing a lot of information that was stored in the IMARPE data set. And all this information has been very productive in terms of, knowing much better what is the occurrence of different species of Procellariformis that come from, not only from New Zealand, but also from other sites. And this information is very important for knowing, the possible risks that these species are facing with the fisheries in Peru. So, and also Javier provided me, we were, in a first pelagic trip to capture Chatham albatrosses. I will tell you the story a little bit later, but he was, collecting most of the information and also taking very good pictures I will show later too. And also, I think I forgot to Green Taylor from the Department of Conservation. And no less important are our friends from Chatham Island, the Maori chiefs that, or owners, sorry, of the Motuhara, or 44th Island. So it's very important, the collaboration with them, because in this way it was possible that I could land on the island, and all these, collection of data from the islands on the Chatham Islands are possible with the permission of Maoris, particularly to George Gomez, Jack Diamond, and Josh Thomas. Okay, I have structured the presentation in 4 different blocks. The first one, I will talk about the updating of the occurrence of Trans-South Pacific Procellariformes. In the field guides, in the identification seabird books, and in internet. So you will find a lot of information about the distribution of different species of Procellariformes. But in Peru, with the advance of new technologies and having more people, paying attention what is going on in offshore waters, and also having these surveys that IMARPI is carrying out every year in offshore waters of Peru. So it's possible to have a better idea now how many of them are coming to Peru from the other side of the Pacific. This is something very important, because I will not talk today about other species that come from other sites, like, from the Galapagos, or from southern Chile, or from the Antarctica, or even from the northern hemisphere. So I will focus mainly on the Western Pacific, okay? Basically New Zealand. Then I will talk about what we know in Peru about the albatross and petrel interactions with the fisheries. There are some very few, but still important, published work on this topic, and I will present some of them, to have an idea of the risk that some species are facing now with the artisanal fisheries. In third place, I will talk a little bit about my experience in this collaborative study, traveling to the 44s, and tagging northern bullers, and also helping Mike and Dave Bells and the Department of Conservation to do different surveys on the island. I will tell you a little bit about this experience. I think this is something important, but because very few people, as far as I know, landed on the 44s, and I think sharing this experience could be very, very nice. And finally, the preliminary results we got so far, because the albatrosses we tagged in January this year are still, transmitting locations, but I decided, to cut off the dates to have some preliminary results today. Okay. I'm going to talk about the first block of the presentation, which is updating the occurrence of the Trans-South Pacific Procellariformes. Before that, it's very important to let you know that in Peru, different species of seabirds visit the Humboldt Current. I won't list all of them, but from the total of non-seabird species, extant species, Peru, or 28% of them has visited at some point the Humboldt Current, the northern Humboldt Current, either by migration routes, either by visiting like vagrants, or just, living or being endemic of the Humboldt Current. 23 of them, of the 98, breeds actually in Peru. We can think on the Humboldt penguin, for example, the Peruvian diving petrel, the Peruvian pelican, the Guanay cormorants, the South American tern, etc. And 45 of them migrate from different. This is a very simplistic map, of course. They are not the actual or the real routes they follow, but it's just to explain a little bit from, different sites. All the migrating seabirds are coming to Peruvian waters. And from the migrating birds, seabirds, we have gulls, terns, tropic birds, penguin, in this case, the Magellanic penguin, albatrosses, of course, storm petrels, and the more diverse group is the petrels here. Boobies, pelicans, cuas and jaegers, frigate birds, and shearwaters. There are some records, of course, of vagrants, and some of them are also hypothetical. So there is like one record of them, but they need confirmation. Okay, so how many species of Procellariiformes visit Peru and are migrating from New Zealand? Well, there are 13, at least confirmed. The first one in the list is the Buller's albatrosses. There are two subspecies well recognized, not only because of the morphometrics, but also for the breeding phenology they have on New Zealand. And as you can see, they visit not only Peruvian waters, but also Chilean waters. I will talk a little bit more about this later, but it's important to let you know that the northern bullers, particularly, that were tagged in January and this year are already feeding in Peru right now. Again, I will talk a little bit about this topic a little bit later, but this is one of the species that visit regularly Peruvian waters as part of the migration patterns they have, a part of the life history of this species. Then we have the Salvin's albatross, a little bit bigger than the Buller's albatrosses. They are found on islands on New Zealand too, and they also come to or visit Peruvian waters during the months of, during the autumn and winter mainly. They are regular visitors in lower number though than the Buller's albatrosses, and I think this is the consequence of the numbers or the breeding of the number of breeders there are on the New Zealand island. Then we got the Chatham albatross. This is a very rare albatross, breeding only in the Pyramid Island, very close to the main Chatham Island in New Zealand. And they are also rare, but the number of sightings will depend on the seasons and the years too. They are often seen during fall and winter in Peruvian waters. And then we got the Chatham petrel, or also known locally as ranguru. May I have a minute? I took notes of all, some species, but they are in my backpack. I forgot to bring it here. Just a few seconds. Sorry. Thank you. There are too many numbers. Yeah. Well, that's easy. Yeah, I took notes. Okay, here we go. This is the Chatham petrel. Here we go. This is an endemic. It's an endemic species of New Zealand. They breed on Rangatira Island, is the southeast island, but some translocation. That's it. It's working. Yeah, translocation experiments were done on Pitt Island also and on the main Chatham Island. It is estimated that between 1,000 and 1,100 individuals are or occur on these islands currently. So very few numbers. But some of them come to Peru. The Cook's petrel. They are found mainly in the Little Barrier Island and the Great Barrier and Codfish or Wenua Ho Island, approximately 300 pairs. 300,000 pairs. So it's more numerous than the Chatham petrel, for example. It's also endemic to New Zealand. And it is suspected, not confirmed, that the ones that breed in Codfish Island, are coming to the Humboldt Current. So the ones that are breeding a little bit north are going to the Northern Hemisphere or the North Pacific. For example, those from the Little Barrier Island. Then we have the magenta petrel or taiko. And this is also not only endemic to New Zealand, but endemic to the Chatham Island. And they are only found, well, there's an interesting story about this petrel because it was rediscovered in 1978. And but since then, so only very few individuals have been found, approximately 120 or 25 breeding pairs, so very rare. And currently they are found on the main Chatham Island in a place called the Tuku Nature Reserve, which is located the southwest on the main island of Chatham Island. That's what I mean. So they are also, has been seen in southern Peru, rarely, but they have been reported there. Mainly from, also, confirmed by geolocators. Some of them are, some of the petrels I already shown have been also tagged with geolocators, and some of the species has been confirmed to come to Eastern Pacific, particularly in Peru, with the devices. So we also got the black petrel. The black petrel also breeds in the Great Barrier Island and Little Barrier Island in New Zealand. They breed, there's the estimations are about 5,000 individuals present on the Great Barrier Island, and also a small group in the Little Barrier Island. Yep. Stuck. So it's frozen. Oh, I think, yeah, I click on that.
It's out there.
Hit. Okay. All right. Sorry. Set black. Oh. Black petrel. And then we got the Buller shearwater. The Buller shearwater is, I got the numbers here. Okay, so the Buller shearwaters are found breeding in the Poor Knight Islands in New Zealand. Basically on two islands called Aorangi and Tawiti Rahi. I hope my Maori is not too bad, but this is what I wrote here. These islands are, located, New Zealand has two big islands. So no. And in the Northern Island is basically, they are located like on this side here and the eastern side of the Northern Island, right here. It's rare in South America, but still seen, Then we got the Westland petrel. The Westland petrel, they breed on Punakaiki, South Island in New Zealand, so in the bigger island. So the name of of the New Zealand island is Aotearoa in Maori. And they breed on Punakaiki South Island in New Zealand. And they are also found in, they travel, they cross the entire Pacific, and they are usually seen in Chile, but also some reports have been done for the southern Peru. The white-chinned petrel, this is a very common petrel seen in Peruvian waters. Actually, they breed on different places around the southern hemisphere, including the South Georgia, the Prince Edward Islands, the Crozets, the Kerguelen, the Falklands, in the South Atlantic, but also and in the South Indian Ocean, of course. Subantarctic islands too, and of course in New Zealand, in Auckland, Campbell, and Antipodes Islands. So that's the place where they breed. There are millions of them. They are very numerous. And it is suspected that the group breeding from New Zealand is that are coming to Peruvian waters. The sooty shearwater, or TT, also a very common shearwater. They breed in New Zealand, but also in Australia and Chile as well. In New Zealand, there are reports of over 180 colonies by millions. And of course, they are, traveling to different places around the world. But of course, I think a big portion of the population is visiting Peruvian waters, based on what I have seen too. In this year, actually, last year, by March, we got a very strong El Nino in Peruvian waters, and the most common seabird I found on beaches was the sooty shearwater. Yeah, by far, more than even endemic seabird species of the Humboldt Current. Finally, the white-faced stone petrel is the only stone petrel that is, is coming to Peru from New Zealand. But also they breed in Tristan de Cunha in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean in Australia and New Zealand. Also, they are found in Cape Verde and Canarias Islands in the western North Africa. And there are reports of many subspecies. So this is a species that, molecular biologists would like to study, definitely. Fine, I forgot this guy, is the northern giant petrel. There are not confirmation they are coming from New Zealand, but for sure they came from Australia. So it's not, or it's very likely that they also come from New Zealand too. Actually, in the 44s, they are breeding also in large numbers. Suffixed. And then we got the possible migration from the West Pacific. So those that are possibly coming. So we need confirmation. I don't want to spend a lot of time, describing all of these species. But we got the Kermadec petrel, we got the black-winged petrel, the Gould's petrel, and the Cape petrel. So all of them are visiting the Peruvian waters, but we are not still sure if they are or from where they are coming. Exactly. And also we have two species of prions, the Antarctic and the broad-billed prion that, they have seen also frequently in Peruvian waters. And the reason why coming to Peru, I think, is not something that should be new for all of us, but just in these maps shown here, is very important to recognize, all these effect of the Humboldt Current. In this part of the world, the sea surface temperature should be much higher than it is, but due to the Humboldt Current and the upwelling system, we got colder waters. And I think most of the Procellariiformes coming from the other side of the Pacific are attracted by the productivity of the Humboldt Current. But I also think that they also should be attracted by the ocean fronts. So in other words, not only the cold nutrient-rich water of the Humboldt Current, but also the interface between the oceanic warm waters and also the cold water of the Humboldt Current. So they have two possibilities. And all of these change annually, seasonally, and also got a great effect of El Niño. And here, so this is a map showing the sea surface temperature, of course, but pay attention also in the winds, because the winds, the westerlies, are very important for the migration of the albatrosses, at least, and probably from the other petrel species that, come from this part of New Zealand here, about 44 degrees and a little bit farther south, and use the winds, of course, to be transported with low energy cost to this part of South America. And in terms of chlorophyll A, so we see high productivity here, as we can also observe in other 3 major upwelling ecosystems in the world, and the Humboldt Current is not an exception. And again, I would like to emphasize that not only is the productive waters of the Humboldt Current, but also the ocean fronts that is important. Okay. What we know about, well, now I finished the first block about, an updating of the species of Procellariiformes that visit Peruvian waters. It's very important to recognize them because all of them behave on a different way. And all of them, some of them are mainly surface feeders, others can dive a little bit. And this is very important to take into consideration because the fisheries, the artisanal fisheries in Peru, use different types of gears, long line, and also different target fish, and also it's very seasonal. So matching what we know about the occurrence of these species that are coming to Peru and how the Peruvian fishers, the artisanal Peruvian fishers behave is very important to understand. Well, this is, now I am in the second block, some information about what we know of the interactions between some seabird species and the artisanal fisheries in Peru. So in Peru, we have 116 landing sites for the artisanal fisheries. There are about 16,000 artisanal fishing boats. Here's a photograph showing part of the fleet. And, employing about 44,000 fishermen. Also, it's important to recognize that long lines is present in 20% of the landing sites. The purse signs is the preferred gear used for the artisanal fleet, but long lines are also important. And 96% of mahi-mahi, the dolphin fish, is caught in long lines, so more than %. And based on these statistics, between these years, between 400 and 1,600 long line vessels were catching mahi-mahi. So it's an important part of the fleet that is fishing for mahi-mahi in Peru. Also, mahi-mahi is caught in spring and summer, so it's very seasonal. But also, the long line fishery is targeting sharks in fall and winter. It's like alternating. There is a little bit of overlapping, but sharks are usually caught in fall and winter, whereas the mahi-mahi in the other months of the year. And for sharks, they target basically blue sharks, shortfin, and common treasure sharks. This is like a seminal study, like one of the first ones trying to quantify the effects of the artisanal longline fisheries in northern Peru and the effects on some seabird species. This was published in 2001. We're talking about 23 years ago, and it was published by Yanke, Goya, and Guillen from the Peruvian Marine Research Institute. So this study was in 1998 during a strong El Nino, and there were a lot of interviews to fishermen, and of course, most of them confirmed, in fact, that seabirds were hooked in their lines, and 40% of the hooked seabirds were albatrosses. Which albatrosses? Well, mainly the waved and the chattel albatrosses. They were the most common. This is an index of capture per unit effort in terms of how many birds were captured in this period, considering 1,000 hooks deployed between 0.74 and 1.75. This is actually very high. This is a very high value. But again, during these extreme conditions of El Nino, we got warm waters very close to the coast, and probably seabirds that are usually offshore approach to the coast or inshore waters and were more prone to be captured in the fishing gear. Annual estimates based on different indicators indicate that between 2,000 and 5,000 seabirds, mainly albatrosses, wave and chattel albatrosses, can be caught in this northern longline fishery. This was an alarming numbers, of course, and deserved more research. And then by like 5 years later, there was another group in Peru in collaboration with Wake Forest University that were tracking albatrosses and monitoring the albatross colony on Española Island at Punta Ceballos. And they were banding a lot of albatrosses, fledglings, and also adults. And they were also with satellite transmitters. And meanwhile, in the Peruvian coast, there were another group led by Jeff Manco and Joan Alfaro that were working with the fishermen and interviewing them, and also being part of the crew at some trips. And finally, they got a number of leg bands recovery. And so the fishermen reported a lot of bands of dead waved albatrosses. This study also revealed that the capture was not only incidental, but was also intentional. That's something that kept my attention, because the albatrosses are, they are eaten by the fishermen, but also they are used as bait occasionally. So the capture was not, at least in the north, not necessarily incidental, but also intentional. Based on all these numbers, based on the lake land recovery and the numbers they already had on the Galapagos Island, they estimated that between this period of time, between 1999 and 2005, the adult survival decreased considerably. Even it was lower than historical records. And also they recognized that it was like a male-biased captures, which of course is affecting the population dynamics of these species. And this is only a sample of a map, showing the locations of the albatrosses as dots, and then the fishing areas where they basically are interacting, with the long line vessels. There's a lot of overlapping, and depending also the port, but also the fishing gear. This is another study, but that was different. That was the PhD thesis of Jeff Mango from University of Exeter in UK. And the approach was different because he was on board. So there were onboard observers, not only interviews, in ports, but also, they got observers in the boats, got a lot of trips, like, 300 fishing trips in a relatively long study period, like 6 years here. But I don't want to, give you details of all the information here, but basically what they found was that there were about 16 species captured. The numbers were not so high. So we are talking about between 169 and 250 seabirds in 6-year period. So it's not like thousands or tens of thousands. But within the most important captured species, we got the waved albatrosses, we got the black-browed albatrosses, the Chatham, the pink-footed shearwater, and the sooty shearwater, the white-shinned the white-shinned petrel, the black petrel, and I don't remember this one, but yeah. So there were a high variety of Procellariiformes compared to what was done before, which was focused mainly on the wave albatrosses and Chatham albatrosses. And this is, of course, because there were onboard observers and a higher number of trips. Also, there were a recent publication of, exploring the role of fishers, so what they know, about their experience when they are, going at sea, and how this information can be compiled, and to provide some insights of what is going on with interactions with seabirds. And the boats here, well, in this map, what you see here in this map is like the locations of the long net deployments along the Peruvian coast. You see basically it's, a large range. So we're not talking about only one specific area, but, the fishermen use long lines relatively all along the Peruvian coast, except, this small gap here, but still, it's a big area. The capacity of the boats, I didn't mention this, is relatively small, between 2 and 30 metric tons of capacity. The number of hooks per line is also variable, very variable, between 100 and 3,000. They can fish, in a wide range, offshore between 15 and 800 kilometers. And in this study, they found between 4 and 83% of boats with seabird bycatch. So this variation depends on the seasons, the years, and also the port, where the boats are, going at sea. And as you can see, they estimated capture per unit effort of 0.018 birds per 1,000 hooks. Again, as I told you, these numbers are, they are approximations. More data is needed to, of course, to confirm these values. Finally, this paper came this year, I guess. Yes, this year, again with interviews, and but also included not only the long-line fisheries, but also the pure seines fisheries, artisanal, not the commercial, not the anchovy pig fishery, but the artisanal one. But I was, the reason I selected this, this paper was because even in pure seine fisheries, the wave albatrosses and the white-shinned petrels can be caught. So it's not only, related to the long-line fisheries, but also to the pure seines fishery as well. All right, this is what we know so far in terms of the interactions and some quantitative studies of the interactions between some species of Procellariiformes and the artisanal, either long-line and pure seines fishery in Peru. Of course, more studies are needed, no questions about it. And now I will tell you a little bit, very shortly, our collaborative study between New Zealand and Peru to track northern bullers albatrosses. So everything started in 2020. So Javier and I presented a proposal, a small, to the ACAP small grant application in 2020 with the title of this project. It's a little bit long, but was very ambitious. We didn't have, at least I didn't have any idea how difficult it's going to be, but was integrating an onboard observer program and remote tracking data to evaluate the interactions between the small-scale longline fisheries and adult Chatham albatrosses in their wintry grounds of Peru. So it was very ambitious, as you can see. So we decided to, get some GPS solar panel transmitters, satellite transmitters. So they're hybrids, GPS, but also transmitting to the positions to Argo satellite that was manufactured by TechnoSmart. And so we didn't have a better idea than going in these, fishermen boats that are targeting sharks and going at sea for 2 weeks to capture the Chatham albatross, which is already rare at sea. Brilliant idea. So we were like prepared for this, preparing the pelagic adventure. I already knew that I was really bad in boats, particularly in long trips. I got seasick very quickly and very badly, for sure. But that time, you will remember that, we had this COVID-19 pandemia. And my wife said, if you want to go in a fisherman boat 2 weeks with a crew of 3 people, 3 fishermen, and you don't know if they had the virus, you need a vaccine because otherwise you are not going. And I said, yeah, but in Peru, we don't have any vaccines, so there are no vaccination programs. So I needed to travel forcibly to the US to get vaccinated. So before going to the boat, I needed to travel to San Francisco, to be more precise, to get COVID-19 Pfizer shot, to have, the free card to go to this trip. As you can see here, that everybody was paranoid, in the airplane. You see in the mask and also the face shield and everything, very, very paranoid. And this is the long line artisanal boat. This is how they look like, a little bit, just some shots. You can see the lines here, the fishermen preparing the hooks, the kind of boat. This is a wooden boat, basically measuring approximately 10 meters long, perhaps 6-7 meters wide.
Or how wide are we going?
All right, here you go. And so we were, very excited, very happy. So we got the devices, we got the ideas, etc. So we went at sea, and after a few days, the fishermen started the fishing. See the sharks here on the deck. They kill the live sharks on the deck, and also start opening them, and they throw all the guts outboard. So this is why many species of seabirds are attracted. Here you can see some pictures taken by Javier. Sorry, I didn't put your name here, but it's like, they are attracted by, the chum, the blood, and particularly the liver. They are very, very aggressive when the liver was thrown outboard. And you can see here, of course, northern buller, and also black-browed albatrosses and white-chinned petrel. Just competing and trying to get some part of the chum. And because they were very close to the boats, we were able to use like a circular modified hook net. So we created. And of course, we attached the device on the lower back of the bird, thinking that they will last many, many months. We were very optimistic, of course. And here's, Javier, just ready to release one of the northern bullers, one of the dark northern bullers. And yeah, so we tagged one Chatham Island albatross and 5 northern bullers in a second trip, which I didn't go, only Javier and a friend of mine too. And, this is a very tragic phase here. Like, I was like very sick here, not eating at all, not drinking water because I was vomiting all the time. And in the middle of the trip, I was here, you see, this was my corner. Here was my sleeping bag and my backpack here. And was very, very sick and couldn't stand up at all. And Javier, in the middle of the trip, said, yeah, we got a Chatnal albatrosses. So I need like to wake up, and attach the logger. I'm sorry, the transmitter. And was my worst experience, attaching attaching the device on the bird, doing my best, because that was a serious thing to do. Very, very sick. I lost, I don't know how many kilograms here in this trip. So because of this, I promised myself, okay, I won't do this again anymore. But I am still interested in the albatrosses. So what can I do? So I called my friends from the Department of Conservation in New Zealand and say, okay, so I can't go at sea anymore. But what do you think if I go to New Zealand and attach the devices there? And they were very happy with the idea and support my trip too. So I ended up in the 44s in January 2024, so this year. You can see some pictures here of the landing on the 44s. So it's very difficult, no beaches. So you need to jump up the skipper in the right time, when the wave is rising and the tide is like rising a little bit. So that's the only way you can jump on, rocky shore, which is very slippery. You see all the kelp hill and the algae here over here. So you need to be very careful. And here is Mike Bell, this is Mike's Dave Bell, waiting for, just you need to throw all, the equipment and the food and the water from the skipper to where we are. Oops. And there is no flat areas on the 44s except this particular patch here. So in the middle of the northern bullers colony. So that's a very nice view though. So I was, inside my tent, resting, sleeping, and you open your tent and you see this, wonderful view of the albatrosses. They are very loud, though, so there's a lot of noise at night, but you get used to it. And this is the colony, so very dense colony. There are a lot of birds being monitored here, with bands, and Mike and the Department of Conservation, is doing, annual checks of the colony, perhaps 2-3 times a year during breeding, to check for, reciting of bands and attaching geolocators and other devices. There are also other seabird species I won't show here, like the northern royals, the northern giant petrel, Cape petrels, etc. But I'm running out of time. Then we tried to do some experiments like, okay, so why don't we try it and harness? So we can talk about this, in the coffee break if you want to, because it's very, important to receive some feedback, but I feel like I don't like it. So we just, testing a little bit. First, we used like a leg loop, which didn't work at all. And then we tried only a test for an hour or so to see how this transmitter looked with a harness, the chest harness in the bird. We didn't use it, so we decided to change the device. So we use a PTT because these ones, sorry, I didn't mention, were a little bit bigger and taller. They were GPS transmitters with solar panels. So we decided to switch not using them for this year at least, and instead using PTT satellite transmitters in the tail feathers, which work better because they were smaller. And we know that the birds are going to molt during the migration. At some point, they are going to fall off, but still, so we were very optimistic that at least they are going to be on the bird when they are in Peruvian or Chilean waters. So this is some pictures of how we attach the transmitter using Tesa tape in the tail feathers. And well, of course, after 12 days, 10, 12 days on the island, so we returned to the Chathams and then to Peru. Some preliminary results. So the birds are still, active in South America. So this study has not stopped yet. So they are still, the devices are still transmitting. But I decided to cut off by May 10th to have some, preliminary results on this presentation. And this is the reason why there are few information still for the Peruvian waters, because by May 10th, they were like moving from Chile to South Peru. Something important is that we tag failed breeders because we wanted that a quick departure from the colony, because we were using transmitters in the tail feathers, so we want to maximize the deployment time, and we expected that the failed breeders are traveling earlier than successful breeders, and this is the reason why we use them. And of course, Mike Bell had all the banded birds with all the history of them, so we knew males, females, probably some of the information he collected from these birds, and they were 100% sure they were failed breeders. And so they departed between January 22nd and March 29th and arrived to the coast of South America between February 28th and April 17th. And the commuting duration, so that the duration of the trip crossing the Pacific was between 12 and 47 days. So this is what we got with the information from 10 birds. And this is a kernel analysis showing in red the 50% of density, and the blue is 95% of habitat use. As you can see, of course, this is a major hotspot because they were hanging around before, going to South America, and another hotspot in northern central Chile here, very, very close to the coast. And nothing very important in southern Peru because, as I said, they were still going to this site, or they were still exploring this part of southern Peru when we decided to stop downloading the data for this presentation. And these are maps extracted from a report from Johannes Fischer last year. And as you can see, the pattern is very similar. So it's, but here we have in blue the northern bullers, and in red the southern bullers. Now the southern bullers are going later than the northern bullers to South America. But as you can see, they are very, very similar, at least at the first approach, what we found this year. And this information is with geolocators between the albatrosses and the fisheries. Also, we overlap this information. This is the habitat use, the marine habitat use by the albatrosses is represented by 95% here, 95 and 50%. And the activity and presence and fishing effort, I would say, of the fisheries in Peru, in Peru and Chile. As you can see, there is not a huge overlap, but again, so they were exploring areas that also were used by the longline fishery and percent fishery along the Chilean coast. Something important to recognize too. Okay. To end this presentation, I have some take-home messages. The first one is the tagging will continue in the coming years. We would like to incorporate other species, particularly the southern the southern bullers, and with other more precise devices, not only satellites transmitters, because they send between 1 and 3 locations a day, but also to have GPS transmitters. And also at the same time, keep going with the tracking of the long line of display tests. I think it's very important and innovative. It's not very easy to do this, and they are not within the vessel monitoring system that has the program overhead for this particular fleet. International collaboration is key to develop effective mitigation plans to reduce bycatch, not only between New Zealand and Peru, as we can see, but Chile is totally working too, and Ecuador, why not? Onboard observations and bycatch mitigation technique testing in Peru is strongly encouraged. Javier already is doing it. And this is something very important to have a better conclusion about this problem or possible problem in Peru. And finally, a re-evaluation of priority areas with the new information we are gathering, where the seabirds face the highest bycatch rates, because this will allow to identify where conservation frames are best effects. An example, is the seabird bycatch workshop group of ACAP led by Bird Life and Global Fishing Watch in this upcoming ACAP that is going to be held in May. And special thanks to Juliana and Federico for inviting me to this conference, and thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Carlos. So we have time for questions.
Thank you, Carlos, for your presentations. Well, it was amazing. I'm Gabo from Brazil, and you were talking about artisanal fisheries, and then you showed like very different vessels. The first one that we were tracking the birds there, and then on the other side, the vessels that you were tracking, the vessel itself. So how do you characterize like what is artisanal and what is an industrial fishery? We do have like this problem in Brazil. We have like these very small vessels just like this, and also the other one with like 15 meters, something like that. And we are facing like very different challenges in addressing bycatch and monitoring. And we do not have like a specific standard for what is an artisanal one and what is an industrial one. How do you manage that in Peru? Okay, that's a good question. I'm not an expert in fisheries, but I can tell you this. In Peru, it's very simple. The commercial fishery is based almost completely on algae. The poor safe fishery is this fishery is targeting algae for making mainly fishery export. Basically, the boats are very large. I know how large they are. For sure, more than 20 meters. Correctly, Javier, I'm not. Okay, so so this is not for what we call direct consumption. So the actually is not for feeding people. It's just for making fish meal, and this is industrial. And the other fishery is because they are small boats, usually wooden boats, most of it, and they are small in capacity between I showed between 8 metric tons and 30 metric tons at the most, and they are small, and the captures they have is for direct consumption. So in our case, the separation between commercial and artisanal is very simple. It's not a matter. So it's very separate.
parallel like history of all the United States. Mm-hmm. You mean the is not fisheries? Okay, you know, I have to go shit. I like that. It's first time to see. Oh, okay, that's okay. That web, yeah, there are some research. Also, you're well, showing that they are targeting money, but also sharks. How shallow are these years? Oh, that's a good question. I think, Javier, I think you can help me in this because you were at sea. No life, yes. You bet. For example, right, it's our 10 years. The first 6 years, they are probably these, and the last year is not without anything. And the other one, the ones are using sharks. So it's our 10 years. Really, but like pollination all demand time last year water and they have water out year 80 rats. So they got three sharks, they want to go on red plants, so that's why they buy it. So you're talking about waiting, they extend very hard. And they use it those times for this jar, see 1,000, 1,000. Still maybe 6. So you got like this is good. Yeah, and you told me yesterday that in the shark fishery, so you got